Hello, crafty pals. We're in a different location because I am doing some traveling for work this week. That does not mean that there is not a crafty update. Because last week, after shaming myself with the dead projects, or resurrecting the dead projects rather, I got right to work. Last week, after recording, that evening, that very evening, I worked on the lining for the ramen bag. As you can see here, I got a little creative because I wanted to test out a lining style that would be both beginner friendly and multiple gauge friendly, right? Because if I'm going to write up a pattern for that crocheted bowl, if people are making it and it ends up different sizes, I wanted to have lining instructions in the pattern that would result in a pretty good lining that you could easily customize, right? So not like a printable, scalable pattern that you cut out of fabric and put in the lining, but rather instructions of how to measure your bowl and make something that was both friendly to people who maybe haven't sewn before or people who had some level of experience. So what I did was I cut a long strip of fabric using some measurements from my bowl, folded it so that there was a seam on the short end, seamed it, hemmed it at the top, and then gathered it at the bottom. That does result in a little bit of a extra fabric situation in the lining, as you'll see when I put it in. There's a lot of wrinkles in it. I personally am fine with that. Little things may get lost in the folds if you have teeny tiny things in your purse, but I don't typically carry things loose that are teeny tiny. So for me, it wasn't that big of an issue. Now, for other people, it might be. So I'm thinking about different ways to maybe address that lining. But for now, for my own purposes, I'm very happy with how it came out, and I love how the fabric looks, as you can see in the video magic. So I did about half of the process on my machine and then half by hand. I hand stitched the lining into the crocheted bag by hand throughout the week. I use the Pomodoro technique for doing tasks at work, and when I hit my 25 minutes of work, I spend 5 minutes working and stitching on that bag. It only took me like 4 rotations of that to get the bag stitched up. I probably would have been faster if I was just sitting and stitching it instead of starting and stopping and needing to rethread my needle and things like that a couple different times to get more thread because I didn't calculate correctly. But it worked out great, and I really am happy with the result. The only thing left you'll see, or you saw in that little video clip there, the top of the bowl, the broth part, if you will, has a bunch of ends and stitches from sewing all the toppings on, and I want to cover that, and I'm thinking I'm going to do it using just a plain piece of non-frayable fabric, so maybe some felt, and double-sided adhesive interfacing. So you iron it on and it glues that felt into the lid. I thought and sketched some different ways to like make that into a pocket, which I'm still kind of toying with, but at the very least I want the felt to cover those stitches so that you don't see them anymore. So it's a nice clean look at the end. You have a lined bag, those loose ends that are up on the top get covered up, and everything is happy times. The next thing I did that very same night while I had my sewing machine out is I worked on the jacket. As you can see here, I was really happy. If you watched last week's vlog, you know that I was really scared to work on it again because the last time I had been using my machine to sew in the crocheted panels of the denim jacket, I broke a needle, which happens. And I was like, you know what, if I'm just going to be breaking needles and frustrated, I don't want to work on it. So I gave it its several month timeout and felt like I have the machine out. Let's just work on it now. I got the rest of the panels that were pinned in place and complete. I got them sewn in, and I'm really happy with how it looked. There were definitely frustrating moments still. It's gonna be kind of a wacky project because there's so many little odd spots to sew into, like where the breast pockets are, the flaps for those. You have to kind of like roll and manipulate them to get around them without sewing the flap closed, which I don't want. We want more pockets, not less pockets. So had to do some manipulation with that, but it turned out great and everything went really, really well with it. I was happy. I had the sturdier needle in, which obviously helps. The needle that I broke last time was still a denim needle, but it was used, right? It wasn't super sharp. And this one that's in my machine now, sharp, good. As I'm sewing more in, I'll probably switch it out pretty quickly, maybe sooner than I normally would, to have another nice sharp needle so I don't keep breaking needles on this project. I have left a slit on the one side so that I can figure out how to put a pocket in. Again, I'm still debating on that. I haven't done any work on it. I'm definitely leaning towards using a fabric pocket. Last week I mentioned I was debating crocheting the pocket or sewing in a fabric one, and I think fabric is going to win out, but now I'm just doing the mental gymnastics to figure out how I want to attach it to the edge, what kind of treatment I want to do. Do I want to sew it in by hand? Blah, blah, blah. So I've been crocheting on it again, working on some of the other panels. I don't have any video of those, and I also didn't bring it with me, so you'll just have to be surprised next week. Hopefully I'll have at least one more panel done and ready to sew in. Other fun things, I got that yarn off the wheel and all done last week, which was really, really fun, and started spinning immediately. I got a new bump of fiber onto the spinning wheel, and it is literally minutes away from having the first single ply done, the first group of it. I haven't picked what I'm going to pair it with yet, but here is the single I was spinning from. Just gorgeous. And this is BFL, so Blue Face Leicester, and it is from, as always, Mother of Pearl. Go check them out. Their work is fantastic. If you want beautiful spinning fiber, that is the place to go. I don't know what I'm going to pair it with. I actually do have some natural undyed wool that I bought from a fiber festival this spring, earlier this year. Yeah, this spring. And that is like a cream and gray variegated, and I have a semi-insane amount of it. And I think it would look really lovely with this, and it would pair, like texture-wise, pair really nicely. But I was also kind of thinking of just spinning that natural undyed fiber with itself and not pairing it with any colors. So later this week, I will probably look at my fiber stash and see if there's anything that jumps out that I think would be paired really nicely with what is almost done and on the wheel. I think it's gorgeous. The colors just make me so happy, and I can't wait to see it paired with whatever I discover in my stash to pair it with. And finally, final crafty adventure from last week. Friday night, some of the ladies who are local to me, we've been talking about getting together and doing like a knitting night. Some of them have knitted before, most of them have not. And we finally did it last week. We got together on Friday night out in the middle of nowhere, and I taught two of them how to knit, and it was so nice to be back to teaching, and it was really, really fun. Little cute video magic. It just, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just excited about it, but it makes my heart really happy to be teaching knitting again. I used to teach it a lot when I was working at Unwound, and I miss it lately a lot more. I think in the fall because people are like, thinking like, oh, I'll learn to knit for the winter. And that's when we taught a lot of classes at Unwound. And, kids are going back to school, so people have time, or students, it was a university town, so students would be coming in and like, I want to learn to knit, make myself some hats. And it was always really fun to teach, and it was great to see that like aha moment for people. And it was neat to be doing that again. So I'm excited. They've even texted me since then and said, some of them have said that they have continued knitting after our lesson. And look at, like, they did so good. Like, the two that are up close in that video, they had never knit before. Professionals, right? They're hustling me. They must have been knitting before. But it was great fun. Had a lovely time, and we've already planned future crafty evenings. So that's going to be really, really nice. Something to look forward to. That is the update for this week. I have Halloween hanging over my head. Our kids have their costumes are pretty much done. Just one cape needs to be made. So I am planning that I will be going to the craft store while I'm on the road and getting fabric for the cape, because I ridiculously don't have any correct cape fabric, as I've been informed by the one who's going to be wearing the cape. I don't have the correct fabric for it, so I need to go get some. So we'll probably be going to Hobby Lobby tonight after I'm done working. Fun. Well, thank you for coming along on this on the road episode of the Crafty Vlog Studio updates. And until next time, stay crafty.